Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be. Welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're looking at how to create a kind of relationship with your child that means that they can become, and they're encouraged to become, their authentic self rather than a mini version of you, because you may have unconsciously been projecting who it is that you want them to be onto the way that you bring them up.
Yeah, this is something that I see with a lot of my clients, the men that I work with. They may have had the challenge and inspiration that they required as children, but a lot of the times it's guided to what the parents want, or a lot of the time it's what the dad wants. So the dad interacts with the child when it's something he wants, or he encourages the child to work hard at something or do something, but it's not necessarily what the child wants. So the outcome of that is maybe a successful career, but it's not necessarily authentic. It's not necessarily what that person wants, what makes them happy. And a lot of the times the man ends up not even knowing what makes him happy, quite disconnected to how he feels because it's not important. It wasn't important in his childhood experience.
Yeah, there's a disconnect between his authentic purpose and the purpose that he's carrying on behalf of his parents. I think a lot of it's got to do with how much worth you derive from status. If you've got two unconscious parents who see success defined in very definitive ways, i.e. a big house or a certain career or earning lots of money in whatever job that is, getting married early, then if they're unconscious as to that ideal being promulgated, that's the right word, they are going to act in that way without even realizing it, and the kids are going to pick up on it without even realizing. I've had friends who weren't allowed to study what they wanted. I've had clients, actually. I think it was a client that she wanted to study art design. In fact, I've had three. I can think of at least three just right now, where they know what they want. The kids knew what they wanted to do and they knew what lit them up. But like you said, the father actually, in this case, they said, no, this is what you're going to university to study. And if you don't, you're not being funded. Basically, there's no choice.
Guilt trip.
And in my case, they had to become a lawyer or they had to become a doctor. Very limited traditional interpretations of what success looks like. So the professions, law, banking.
There's a lot of influences for children at that age. We're seeing it at the moment with our children's friends and their kind of relationship with their parents. There's a lot of pressure to maximize grades, for example.
Because it looks good on the parents, because the parents are unconsciously associating how good a parent they are with their children's academic output. Our children's parents right now, it's not so much what career they go into, but which university they're going to end up at, which is exactly the same. I mean, we're coming across it with one of our children, right, who might not even go down the traditional academic sixth form route. And a lot of her teachers are like, shock, horror. How can you possibly divert from the norm, or the norm that we think is the most successful start to life?
Yeah, she's getting no encouragement for anyone else to be authentic or find joy. She's getting a lot of advice from people that are looking at her future and telling her to hedge her bets or think logically about her future.
Put all your eggs in one basket.
I mean, in terms of the other parents, I believe that they're doing what they think is best.
Yeah. Giving their children the best head start, which we all want, right?
We all want it, but they're not aware necessarily of what the needs of their child are. They don't have the experience we've got, and they didn't have the upbringing they've got. So they believe that the best chance of their child succeeding in life is to get the best grades and get the best job. They're not looking at their children from a point of emotional intelligence or happiness or joy or authenticity or any of those things. But we have the perspective of working with many people that had that kind of upbringing and seeing the side effects of that.
So I think this has got a lot to do with people not being embodied, which obviously I wasn't. I think that was my first step into this work. That's why yoga is often the first step that people take into this work, because yoga makes them more mindful of how they're actually feeling in their body. So if you're only mind-based, then you're going to be only intellect-based. You're only going to be looking at what is superior. What is a superior education? What is a superior university? What is a superior degree? What is a superior qualification to get you ahead? You're going to discount how life feels in your body.
100%. That's very external based. The mind is very external based. It's not interested in the feeling or the experience even in that moment. So that's one of the side effects. Actually, one of the side effects of having that experience as a child is that you have all the repressed emotion, you go up into your head, and then you exist from there, and then you parent from there. Another side effect of not having that parent that encourages you to explore how you feel, what you're interested in, what brings you joy, is that you develop that people pleaser tendency, which is you don't get love, affection, attention. You don't get your needs met by what makes you happy. You get your needs met by making the other person happy, because that's the way you're parented.
Yeah.
Get good grades and I'll reward you.
Well, do the parents even know what brings them joy? I mean,
No, because they're not in bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
Possible.
One of my, I don't even want to call it a tool, because it's just so obvious when you start doing it. But one of the main things that I make sure that every woman that works with me does is write a self-care list. What makes you feel excited, motivated, feeling alive? And conversely, I get them to do too, what makes you feel nurtured, calm, soothed? These are two very different types of feelings. If you haven't done a self-care list before, which none of them have, you're not tapping into how you feel on a daily basis, on a moment-by-moment basis. So how can you even make any big decisions about what's going to bring you happiness? You can't.
You can't.
Experience counts for everything. We are more experienced. I mean, I was having this conversation with our children, two of whom are now teenagers, going, I've been through this. Like, I know I seem really old to you, but I have been through. Oh, we were talking about alcohol, weren't we? I know what the effects are. I know how you're going to feel. And they're like, oh, you don't know anything. So experience does count, and we need to impart that experience and that wisdom to our children. However, that doesn't mean that your experience and your wisdom should overlay the kinds of people that they're going to be or that they want to be. And I think some of these parents are thinking, well, we think that this is the right route to success and happiness, therefore this is what you're going to do.
I completely agree. I think there's a lot of positives to instill work ethic and hard work and discipline and challenge and all of these things into children. But it's that final piece, challenging them to be the most authentic, best versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And then giving them the tools of hard work and discipline in order for them to fulfill that based on how they feel, rather than you need to work hard because I'm only going to give you love if you get good grades. That's where the dysfunction comes. I'm
struck by, again, something our eldest said in the car the other day, because we were saying the bit that we were taught, everyone says you need to be yourself. I mean, like, even if they don't mean it, that's what everyone thinks they're doing. You need to be yourself. You need to feel confident in who you are. Yeah. But no one tells you, or at least I wasn't told. And when we told our daughter, she was like, oh, so the things that make you feel alive and full of joy and purposeful and motivated and excited, they're unique to you. They're unique. And I think when you're younger, that's not something that you realize. You think, oh yeah, I'm good at that and I find that easy. But yeah, so does everyone else, because you just don't have that perspective yet. And I think if there's one thing we can tell our children, it's that what makes you excited is your thing. Whatever brings you joy is unique to you. It's not shared. And therefore that is what you should be pursuing, whether that is in line with what your parents think or not.
100%.
What society thinks or not.
I mean, I think that's one of the greatest lessons, the greatest gifts we can give our children, and what hardly any of us had, which is how to understand, even feel your feelings and recognize them for what they are and use them as a guide.
Yeah, use your
Like,
body.
kids are just being told what to do all the time, when really they're born with the truth. They're born with a connection to the moment and nature and everyone and their joy and their inspiration. That's what kids do best. They do what they want to do. Reach for this, grab this, put this in your mouth. You're born with that knowledge. But everyone just tells kids what to do, teachers, parents.
I think it's got way worse than it ever has done. I think that's why so many people are turning towards homeschooling. Often, again, led by their children. I can think of at least 4, maybe 5 off the top of my head, children over the past year or past 2 years who have refused to go to school through anxiety. Or they've had a sufficiently severe panic attack that has created some serious existential emotional crisis where they don't know who they are, they don't know what they're doing because of the school system having become more and more and more rigid. Yeah, of course, there's an element of learning. Again, back to wisdom and experience. Teachers used to or should have more experience and wisdom because they are so-called experts in that field and they've been trained to teach in a way that's interesting and motivating, one hopes. But the curriculum, I think across the world, definitely America and in the West anyway, has become so rigid in terms of not only what you need to learn, but how you need to regurgitate that knowledge, how you need to present that knowledge. And we're all different. We all write differently. We all speak differently. We all have different levels of intensity, of passion, of quick-mindedness or more reserve. Of course, that's anxiety-inducing. I mean, I remember saying to my clients that when they often come to me, I'm really anxious or I'm really depressed. Well, are you being authentic in life? Do you like the life that you're leading? Not really. Are you living in the house that you want to live? Are you doing the job that you want to do? Not really. Right. So anxiety comes in that gap. Anxiety comes up in the difference between who you feel you should be, so the mask that you're putting on to show other people, and who you are underneath that. And yet, we can't see that happening to our children. We are asking them, or the school system is asking them to put on a mask, and it doesn't fit most of them. So what's happening? Anxiety, refusing to go to school, panic attacks, which is why a lot of people are turning to homeschooling.
I do see that as a progression of how parenting has come forward, even in one generation, in that kids aren't afraid to ask for their needs to be met. And they're like, school just doesn't serve me. And it doesn't. It probably didn't serve us, but we were well-trained. Well, some of us were well-trained. I wasn't too well-trained and therefore didn't do very well within the system. But kids now are like, no, I'm not getting anything out of this experience. The information isn't resonating with me. I don't believe in half of this stuff. The process is boring.
How can we be that parent that guides and offers experience and wisdom and yet allows our children that space to navigate who they are?
So the first bit is understanding what your child needs from you. They need all those things, a lot of the stuff that you had. But they need it all with a focus on them being the authentic, best versions of themselves, right? And how do you know that? How do you get there? You get that through emotional intelligence. Like you said earlier, what brings me joy? What lights me up, right? What fills me with purpose and motivation and happiness? Well, why not live a life like that? Why not create a life like that and make decisions based on those emotions? You've got the education, you know what your child needs, but the next thing is, how do you deliver that? And for a lot of men, that is a challenge because guess what? They're the ones living in their heads. They're the ones that had that experience in childhood, and therefore they're not connected to their own emotions. And if your own emotions aren't a priority and you're not living from that place of joy and purpose yourself, then it's very hard to create that for your children. So again, the work is within you. The work is listening to self, listening to inner child, connecting with that part of you, holding space, releasing the emotions, and then tapping into those more positive emotions. And then when you have that understanding of self, that's when you can give that to your children.
On a very practical level, and again, this is what I say to people when I get them to do 2 self-care lists. Once you've written out your lists, which are not exhaustive, you're going to keep adding to them. The next action is do one thing off each list every single day. And I don't want to hear that you didn't have time, because what I encourage them to do is to write down tiny things. And if anyone is interested in exploring that on their own, my free workbook, which is called Discover Your Calm, which is on my website, is downloadable and for free. I don't want to hear that no one's got time. It could be sitting at your desk, looking out of the window for 30 seconds, watching the clouds go by. It could be stroking your pet for 20 seconds. It could be lying down on your bed for 1 minute. None of these things are going to encroach on your daily routine. That's the moment at which you stop and you listen and you pause and you connect to how you're feeling. And the self-care list is really just an excuse to do this. But once you can connect to yourself and pause and realize what's going on in your body at that moment, you're already starting to build that dialogue with your body. How am I feeling? What do I need? And then adding the self-care bit onto that means that you're not only going, oh, I should go for a run 3 times a week, or I'm meant to lift weights 4 times a week. That's fine, but you're not really listening. It's all about shoulds. This is more attuned to what you need in that moment. So in that moment, you go, well, let's look at my list. What could I do off this list right now that would feel good? Do I want to do that? Yeah, I could. What about that one? Yeah, that one. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I want to do that. Right. So in that very moment, you are connecting with yourself on a very deep level and attuning to your body, which then builds, like you said, this connection that we need to know what our joy is, know what our needs are. And, on an even deeper level, by connecting to your needs, what you're building then is a sense of trust. So it's actually a really, really simple action, but it's so profound in many ways. If your body then knows that you are listening to it and that you are tailoring your actions to what it needs in that moment, not just on I need to be healthy, I need to go for a run 3 times a week, you then build a sense of trust. And when your body trusts that you're listening, what happens? You calm down. You feel safe. And with women, this changes on a daily basis because our hormones go up and down. We're on a monthly cycle. So what feeds that need on day 1 is going to be very different to what feeds that need on day 14 or day 21 in terms of your cycle. But it's actually helping you to become embodied, to inhabit your body. So I couldn't actually recommend that more. And that's something our parents definitely didn't do.
No, it's a great tip for everybody. A lot of it is about changing the source of your worth. So a lot of people are in their head and the worth is about the achievement. Like you said, even a lot of people's self-care looks like gym, running, looks like pushing, ticking the box. You're a good boy, a good girl. It's not about following your joy often. It's about, and a lot of the times, a lot of my clients are endurance athletes. It goes further than that. It's about punishing self. That's another thing slightly. Redefining where you're getting your self-worth from the external to the internal. So you can get a lot of happiness and joy and worth and presence just from, like you said, listening to your body and acting on it. It's an act of love, an act of self-love in that moment.
Yeah.
And you can't give your child permission to do that. You might be on some occasions, but when it gets stressful and when you're tired and, when you've got a lack of time, then you're going to revert to the old patterns. You're not going to be able to create space for your child if you're not doing it for yourself. If you're living in your head and you're trying to make other people happy, then you're going to project that onto your children as well. So it all starts with you and those little acts that you were talking about, and then develops further into the deep self-work, the deep process of really listening to your inner child.
It's basically, like you said earlier about external sources of validation, it's internalizing that guide. And that's what your inner parent is for as well, isn't it? I mean, I think all of our work is about becoming sovereign, becoming confident enough to explore who you are and find the worth in that, making that internal sat nav inside you, whether that is a source of joy or a source of comfort. right? That's what the inner parent is for. That's another way of feeling regulated, feeling calm, feeling safe, feeling reassured. And that comes from also releasing the patterns that were instilled in you as a child. If your parents second guessed you, if they belittled your needs, so going back to where we started, if your parents were quite attached to certain forms of success or behavior even, so then it's hard. It's really hard to find that sat-nav. You have to work hard to reconnect to your sense of self because you've become used to people pleasing.
It's not easy. My experience with the process with a lot of men is first you try and connect to yourself, and guess what? You've got a lot of noise. You've got a lot of baggage. So you've got sadness, anger. Wow, like where's the joy? Where's the presence? Oh, it's underneath all of that. So first of all, letting go of that, and then you meet the inner child. You meet the little people pleaser. You meet the little kid whose needs weren't met. And you have to step in and reparent that part of you before you can connect to your own joy. And once that part of you feels unconditionally seen and loved and like he doesn't have to perform and that it's okay to be himself and it's okay to play and it's okay to express, then that part of you integrates and then you're left with more of a blank canvas. And then I think that list, that's when I bring that list in with a lot of my men of, okay, so what do you want to do? What really brings you joy? And then it's a process of reconnecting. That's when you can start hearing yourself, when that inner child is integrated and when that baggage has been released.
There's room. Right, if you are full up, you are literally full. There is no room for joy. There is no room for creativity. There is no room for spontaneity because you don't feel safe. You're full of resentment and sadness and disappointment and irritation and all the rest of it. So you have to do that release work first to create the space for joy and creativity to come in. And something that I like to talk about to make this a bit more tangible is that there are two kinds of inner child, actually. I often just talk about the inner child, but there are two kinds. First of all, we have to heal the wounded child who is very scared, who is needing to control, who doesn't want to let anyone else in. Basically, they don't feel safe. So like you said, all those mechanisms, coping mechanisms come in, people pleasing, performing, blah, blah, blah. But once that child feels safe, then when she's in the back seat, there is room for the magical inner child to come out. And that magical inner child is the one that's what we see our toddlers behaving naturally as, like what you said at the beginning. They know what they want. It's like, let's get the glue out. Let's get the glitter. Let's paint in different colors. Let's make a mess. I want to scribble. I don't want to do in between the lines. That's your magical child who has always been sovereign, who's utterly connected to her joy. But that bit gets completely squashed out of us. The inner work comes first to make that wounded child feel safe. And then that magical inner child can come in. And actually, yes, we're saying we want to be guided by our adult self, what brings you joy. But really, we're reconnecting often to our magical child. Yeah. It's like, I sometimes say to my clients, well, if they're like, I don't know what I like. And I'm like, well, okay, let's go back to basics. When you were 7, what did you like doing? Did you like riding your bike? Yeah, I did actually. Used to go for hours. Okay, well, what were the feelings that came with that? What were you doing? Were you exploring? Was it the exercise? Was it the movement? Was it the freedom? What was it that you loved about riding your bike? Did you like drawing? Yeah, I used to love drawing and painting, right? And like exploring what that connection was to kind of rekindle that magical inner child. And then that magical inner child will guide you.
Yeah, and when you found your magical inner child and you see how important it is to reconnect and maintain that, that's basically the job of you as a parent, right? You keep your children safe, but you don't want to squash that or extinguish that magical inner or that magical child, the passion, the joy, the creativity. You give them the tools, you can challenge them, you can guide them, you can do all these things, but make sure they come out of childhood and leave your home with that thing intact.
To summarize from my side, I think it's rather than worrying about what kind of child your child is and thinking about it in an intellectual way, you need to do the work first to find out and role model what brings you joy. So to role model being authentic, the more authentic you can be, the more you're going to role model that is the way forward. If you're in a job that you don't like, in a relationship that you don't like, living in a town or an area in a house that you don't like, that's not good role modeling. You're not inspiring your child to make decisions that are going to bring them happiness. You find your happiness. That comes from being embodied, treating yourself to self-care. Always go back to your childhood. What patterns are getting in the way of you being the parent that you want to be? And therefore encouraging your child to be the kind of amazing, empowered child that you want them to be. Start with you, start with your childhood, clear that, and then you're in a much better position to be able to guide them in the way that you want to be able to.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlin.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.